Have you ever wondered why the people who think the most about life are the least likely to create it? You see them everywhere, the ones who read, question, and observe the world instead of blindly joining it. They overthink love. They hesitate before commitment. They weigh every decision as if the weight of the universe sits on it. And somehow, when it comes to having children, they simply don't. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've told yourself, I'm not ready, or the world is too chaotic, or I'd rather build myself first. But deep down, in the quiet spaces of your mind, a question haunts you. If everyone like me stops having children, what happens to the future? Let's confront a brutal truth, one that Charles Darwin never predicted. Evolution doesn't reward intelligence, it rewards survival and reproduction. And in the modern world, those two things have quietly divorced. Once upon a time, the smartest individuals were the most likely to lead tribes, secure food, protect families, and pass on their genes. But now, intelligence has become self-destructive. It hesitates, questions, doubts. The very traits that once made us wise now paralyze us. The result? The people capable of seeing the long-term consequences of their actions often choose not to continue their lineage. Meanwhile, those who live impulsively, without questioning meaning or consequence, often do. This isn't a judgment. It's an observation, a slow, invisible reversal of evolution itself. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what happens when people lose their why? Modern civilization has stripped meaning from survival. We no longer live to ensure our bloodline endures. We live for comfort, self-expression, and autonomy. We replace the instinct to reproduce with the desire to find ourselves. But what if in that search, we lost something sacred? Plato believed that the purpose of life was to align oneself with the eternal, to leave behind something that outlives us. For him, that something wasn't just children. It was ideas, art, virtue. But even Plato's students had children. Even Socrates, who claimed to know nothing, knew enough to pass life forward. Somewhere along the line, we began believing that thinking deeply was incompatible with creating life, as if parenthood were a betrayal of freedom instead of its ultimate expression. Let's be honest, many intelligent people aren't avoiding children out of logic, but fear. The fear of losing control, the fear of regret, the fear of repeating their parents' mistakes. They want guarantees before they leap, but nature offers none. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, a tendency to overanalyze choices until the moment for action disappears. And that's exactly what evolution punishes most ruthlessly: hesitation. The ancient world didn't allow it. In tribes, uncertainty meant extinction. You either acted or you died. But in modern comfort, hesitation hides behind intellect. It disguises itself as virtue, responsibility, caution, maturity. Yet in excess, it becomes a quiet form of extinction. Every generation of thinkers who hesitate to reproduce filters their own kind out of existence. Slowly, intelligence becomes rarer, not because it's unwanted, but because it's unwilling. Darwin's great paradox lies here. He believed natural selection would favor traits that increased survival. But he didn't foresee artificial selection, the self-imposed filtering of humanity through values and ideology. In ancient Sparta, the strongest survived by design. In modern democracies, the meek multiply by default, because the strong question whether it's moral to bring a child into a broken world, while the broken world never stops multiplying. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian executed by the Nazis, once said, "The ultimate test of a moral society is the kind of world it leaves to its children." But what happens when the moral ones stop leaving children at all? When the kindest, most self-aware individuals decide to step aside, leaving the future to those least capable of protecting it? It's not cruelty that ends civilizations. It's exhaustion. It's when wisdom becomes sterile. You might think, but maybe intelligence will find a new way to reproduce, through art, through ideas. And yes, In a way, that's true. Philosophers leave words, artists leave visions, and scientists leave blueprints. But those things need minds to receive them. Without future generations capable of understanding, even the greatest works fade into noise. A library without readers is just paper. A civilization without successors is a museum. So what are we doing? We build endless knowledge, only to ensure there's no one left wise enough to use it. You, watching this, you feel the pull, don't you? Part of you longs for simplicity, for love, for continuity. But another part, the rational, guarded part, whispers, "Not yet." You tell yourself it's not the right time, that you'll know when you're ready. But time doesn't ask permission. It moves, quietly, until readiness becomes impossible. And then you realize, the people who didn't wait built the world your children will never see. Maybe that's why the modern world feels hollow, because the people capable of filling it with meaning are waiting for perfection before acting, and perfection never comes. Think of life like a candle flame. Each generation lights the next before it burns out. But the intelligent ones, they stare at the flame, studying its chemistry, its beauty, its fragility, and in doing so, they forget to pass it on. By the time they realize, it's too late. The room goes dark, not from ignorance, but from hesitation. The tragedy of intelligence isn't that it fails to see truth, it's that it sees too much and becomes afraid of it. Today, fertility rates in developed nations are collapsing. Japan, South Korea, much of Europe, societies filled with education, comfort, and intellect are quietly dying, not from war or famine, but from choice. Meanwhile, the less educated, less secure, often outnumber them 2-to-1. It's a reversal of natural selection, intelligence selecting itself out of existence. And yet, no one dares to call it what it is, a slow suicide of consciousness. We tell ourselves it's empowerment, freedom, progress. But evolution doesn't care about your personal growth journey. It only asks one question: did you create life or not? Niccolò Machiavelli once observed that societies collapse not when they lose wealth, but when they lose vitality. He wrote, "The fatherland is not maintained by the rich, but by those who multiply." Cold, yes, but true, because history doesn't remember the thoughtful ones who chose not to fight. It remembers the reckless ones who did. So while the wise retreat to their solitude, the world fills with noise. While philosophers debate the meaning of life, the ignorant inherit it. And so, intelligence becomes a ghost, admired, quoted, but extinct. But maybe it doesn't have to end that way. Maybe the next chapter of evolution isn't genetic, but spiritual. Maybe intelligence, once it understands its own self-destructive impulse, can correct it. To bring a child into this world isn't naive, it's defiant. It's a declaration that meaning still matters, that truth and beauty deserve to be reborn, again and again. Perhaps the future belongs not to those who question life endlessly, but to those who dare to affirm it, in the face of chaos, uncertainty, and fear. Because to create life despite knowing how fragile it is the highest form of wisdom. So, maybe the real measure of intelligence isn't how much we understand, but whether we have the courage to continue the story. Darwin gave us the law of survival, but survival alone is not enough. What truly defines us is the choice to pass the torch, even when the darkness feels inevitable. Maybe it's time the thinkers, the doubters, the dreamers stopped waiting for the perfect world to raise a child in, and started raising the kind of children who could build it. Because if the wise don't shape the future, the foolish surely will. The tragedy of intelligence isn't that it dies. It's that it forgets how to begin again.